You're live.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the 52nd week of the Free Assange Online Vigil. This is our special Saturday show. We had a few guests that couldn't make it with us today, so instead of doing our standard format, we're going to do an article, a couple of videos, and do an AMA with you guys. But before we get started, today is day 3,497 since the illegal and arbitrary detention of the WikiLeaks founder, Julian Assange. It is day 450 since the WikiLeaks publisher was trafficked to Belmarsh prison following a $4.2 billion international monetary loan fund to the nation of Ecuador. It is 65 days until the second round of Julian Assange's show trial and extraordinary rendition hearing. It is 1,127 days of incarceration for Reality Winner. But in the good news, it is 1,113th days since Chelsea Manning became free. So I want to give her a big congratulations and just thank everybody who joined us yesterday because Josh and Alex and then myself and Steve top in a little later um, did a digital march around the world. I believe we featured over 15 countries and their personal and group actions in support of Julian Assange. So I just want to again say thank you to Josh and Alex for that because that was absolutely incredible. But how are you today, Steve?
Tired. I am. I had a hell of a week at work. I real quick, man. I gotta because we haven't said this on the vigils yet. I found out at the beginning of the week that frequent contributor to my show and my good friend for like almost a decade, Jason Carney, passed away unexpectedly earlier this month. Um, we are going to try and put together like a little clip reel and hopefully get that out to like his brother and his fiance and the people that he left, but also the people that he interacted with every day on social media and became like part of his family. um yeah, man, it kind of fucked my week up a little bit and got my ass kicked at work and sat in 4th of July traffic going to and from San Francisco yesterday for the action that took place in front of the British consulate, which we did get some live streaming in from there. Yeah, man, I'm beat. I am. Fuck it. And I've got Ryan, the Last American Vagabond, on my show tomorrow. So I've got to like rest my brain up a little bit. That dude is the dude's hella smart.
That's going to be a good show, though. I always love when Ryan's on stuff.
Yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it for sure. I know Josh hates dead air,
I was taking
so
a sip of water. You caught me off guard. I thought I had another 4 seconds. But
what I'd like to do though is kind of jump right into the stuff that's in the doc, and I think it's important to kind of drive home the point that Julian Assange turned 49 in prison yesterday. Spent his second birthday in the Guantanamo Bay of the United Kingdom for publishing factual information for no other reason than publishing factual information. So if we could pull up the Sputnik article that our good friend Mohammed Almazi put out yesterday and just kind of run through it a little bit because it's a good piece of writing. Um, Let me know when we've got that up, Josh.
It's there.
Cool. So I'll jump right into it. Julian Assange supporters from around the world are posting messages of well wishes to the WikiLeaks publisher for his birthday on 3rd July as he remains incarcerated in Belmarsh Maximum Security Prison. We are calling on people to protest by posting selfies with a happy birthday message, despite the fact that Julian Assange is spending a second birthday behind bars. He is guilty of no crime. John Rees of WikiLeaks official Don't Extradite Assange campaign explained. Being put out fantastic graphic um, on the psychological torture that Julian Assange has experienced and discusses the SAMs, the special administrative measures that we've gone through in detail on this show. Um, I have no idea who Norsk Pen is, but I'm gonna assume it's Norwegian journalist. Rees, himself a longtime journalist, called the extradition proceedings against Assange an assault on the freedom of the press, which should be dropped. A solidarity birthday vigil has been organized outside Belmarsh, which started from midday and is expected to continue to around 7. A lot of that was also live streamed yesterday. I hope that you guys were there for that. If you weren't, there's about 26 hours of live stream coverage of various actions going on all around the globe. Julian's mom put out a gut-wrenching tweet along with Stella Morris, who put out a video of her and Julian's 2 children making a cake, which just kind of broke me a little bit. Ms. Assange, who no longer gives interviews, also thanked the small independent media and journalists who have continually investigated and exposed the facts of 10 years of abusive legal process against her son. Mr. Assange's mother also passed on a special thanks to UN Special Rapporteur on Torture, Nils Melzer, along with his medical team. Mr. Melzer and 2 other experts in examining victims of torture concluded last year that the WikiLeaks publisher showed clear symptoms of psychological torture. Chris Williamson, former shadow cabinet member with Labour, blasted the continued incarceration of Mr. Assange as bringing shame onto the UK. Mr. Assange has performed a vitally important international public service in exposing the abuse of corporate and state power, including war crimes. The former MP from Derby North, who has since founded the political show Resistance TV, also lamented the fact that the response from most British parliamentarians has been virtually non-existent, which we discussed a little bit last night on the birthday vigil. Their silence makes them complicit in what can best be described as the torture of Julian Assange, and their failure to speak out brings our democracy into disrepute. Doctors for Assange, who also received a special thanks from the incarcerated publisher's mother, recently published a letter condemning his treatment in which they described medical neglect and torture. And if you haven't, please go follow Alyssa Johnson and Doctors for Assange. They are doing incredible work. The messages of hope and support were also echoed by some in the legal profession. Polona Fluorjanic, probably butchered that, of the group Lawyers for Assange, described the prosecution and incarceration of Mr. Assange as a form of increasingly grotesque lawfare, characterized by a systematic and continuous disregard for his fundamental human rights. She said Mr. Assange has displayed immense strength of character by defying the odds and celebrating his 49th birthday. I just want to get a quick reaction from you there, Andrew, and then we can go ahead and transition into the anonymous video, which is incredible.
I mean, I really think the show of support's absolutely beautiful because it comes from around the world. It comes from multiple different political spectrums. But that last line that you'd read there is really heartbreaking to me. That Julian defies all odds and celebrates his 49th birthday today, yesterday. He's a publisher. There should be no threat to his life for publishing information. It's a basic practice of a democratic country, right? That's supposedly what we have here. And for him to be able to be punished in this way, that term lawfare, I think really needs to proliferate more because it defines what this is so harshly.
No, you're right. I mean, what we're seeing is state-sponsored terrorism played out on a micro level through the judiciary process. So lawfare is an excellent description. I do not have a PayPal, but Action for Assange does, Anthony.
We don't have a direct one for us. It's just the GoFundMe, but you can donate to GoFundMe through PayPal, I believe.
Yeah, I've got a PO box.
Yeah, if you want to do direct to PayPal, email us because I don't want to put it out on the internets for everybody. info@actionforassange.com, and I can send you our PayPal link or the link that can be used to give us money on PayPal. But there is something because this early on, when I first started doing this. This was back when I was before the vigils, before even I think Taylor and I had met through Anonymous Bites Back. I had reached out to Christine when she had first followed me. And I asked her if she had any advice for a dad raising 2 kids. And this is what she said to me. And I think it's something that is really, I don't know, just touching to read on especially at Julian's birthday. She said, spend time with them, read fairy tales, myths, and legends. Develop a love of reading by joining them up with local history. Reduce screen time, have a pet, spend time in nature, encourage their own thoughts, opinions, theories, but challenge them gently. Focus on core values, empathy, and fairness. Encourage creativity, ingenuity, and inventiveness. Discourage materialism and conformity for its own sake. Encourage their interests and skills. Talk to them a lot. Develop a sense of humor. Encourage a sense of justice by not backing them in disputes when they are wrong. Encourage them to see things from others' points of view. Encourage empathy by asking them to put themselves in someone else's shoes. Develop courage by letting them see you stand up for your principles and not backing down. Validate instinct over ideology, and plenty of hugs. So that's something that I've shared here before, but I think that especially being the day after Julian's birthday now and in a, I don't know, more personal stream setting, that's just something that I really enjoy sharing with people in moments like this.
Yeah, and I mean, it's been a year, and we reflected a little bit, but we also had Bill Benny and Ray McGovern on, and it was their show. And if you haven't watched that, it is fascinating. On my drive up and back to the city yesterday, I'd listened to it over again just because the amount of knowledge that was dropped between those two just phenomenal human beings was mind-blowing. But it's been a really amazing year. It has what we've been able to accomplish with like abso-fucking-lutely nothing. And that's all. I mean, the credit goes all to you guys who are watching right now and who have donated to the GoFundMe's and who have encouraged us and got a hold of us, during the show or after the show, and have sent us stuff to look at and report on. This whole thing works because you guys who are watching right now are a part of it. So thank you very, very much for all of that.
And before we transition into the 2 birthday videos, because we have the Anonymous video and Taylor's birthday video for our other 2 pieces, I just wanted to remind people, because there's a lot of hope and a lot of joy, but that Julian Assange isn't a superhero. He's not beyond just being human. And I think that right now is a really good time to recognize that, and for everyone to just reflect on the fact that if he is simply a person that can do this, then any individual can do something that courageous and that determined, even if it's not with the same skill set, but just in your own way. So this weekend, where they're trying to shut the world down again, but where people are going out, use this time, this weird moment in history, for the first time that person's gotten out of their house for 3 weeks. Approach them and talk to them about Julian. Go and find a 200-person 4th of July event this weekend and just pass out flyers. Every campground around you is going to be completely full. So just use this moment in history at this point to go out there and do something that no one else in your community is doing if you don't go out and do it.
And with that, let's go ahead and roll tape on the birthday video that Anonymous put out like late last night.
Your secrets keep me peaceful. Your lies keep me safe. You are satisfied with my ignorance. And you are in control. But, we are aware. We remember. Collateral murder.
Come on, fire!
200,000 innocent dead civilians in Iraq. Creeping mass surveillance. The censoring of our brothers and sisters. The free press being destroyed. The corruption of the powerful. The apathy of the neutered masses. The silencing of the vocal minority. Today, July 3rd is the 49th birthday of our brother, journalist Julian Assange, who once said, "Knowledge has always flowed upwards to bishops and kings, not down to serfs and slaves." Today is the day we remind you of the situation we are all in. It is not just Julian Assange that is imprisoned, it is our entire press freedom that is under attack. And it is also a day to reflect on the great achievements of WikiLeaks, including, but not limited to, the publication of the Afghan and Iraq war logs, which exposed U.S. war crimes during the Iraq War. And Vault 7, which exposed CIA spying techniques used against citizens. This is information that would have never been made public without the work of Julian Assange.
WikiLeaks has revealed millions of secrets that governments and corporations want to hide from you. The list of revelations is long.
WikiLeaks revelations over the past 13 years have changed our perception of the world around us, and it has changed how we consume information. WikiLeaks provided, and still provides, a platform for every individual to speak up against the powerful. It offers a way to anonymously inform the public about what takes place in secret. As of July 3, 2020, Assange has been in detention for 2,937 days and imprisoned in Belmarsh for 450 days. Historically, Anonymous has been a voice for the voiceless. And we must hold up to that promise. With this call to action, we ask that the entire Anonymous collective stand in solidarity with Julian Assange. Not just today, but every day until he is free again. For as long as he cannot speak for himself, we must be his voice. At the same time, we must help those who continue to expose the crimes of the corrupt and the elite. Do not wait for anyone to come save you. We are on the front lines and your help is needed right now. Join us. We are Anonymous. We are Legion. We do not forgive. We do not forget. Expect us.
I don't know about you guys, but that just gives me chills.
Yeah. That's a better call to action than I think we could ever put out.
Well done, team.
Indeed.
Well done. Gonna go ahead and take this off before Kevin shuts down the stream.
I'm honestly excited to see what comes out, what gets revealed. Because we have, like, this is a crazy fucking year. Like, I don't know if people remember January or not, but that was like 6 months ago, 7 months ago now. And shit's just popped off since then. Like, the whole world is just fucking going nuts. So, thank you.
And look, man, so a long time ago, and I've got, issues isn't the right word. Like I've over time recognized Jon Stewart for what his role was. But it was in 2007, Jon Stewart was giving an interview, and the interviewer was asking him, I think it might have been when he broke Crossfire. I think it might have been that interview when he like made fun of Crossfire and Tucker Carlson so hard that like within 3 months they canceled the show entirely. Which, by the way, if you haven't watched Jon Stewart end Crossfire, it's pretty fucking funny. But they were asking him like, oh, well, it looks like, or maybe it was 2008, but and it looked like Obama was, going to be the next, president. And they're like, well, how's the Daily Show going to be able to handle this? And Stewart goes, the only way that our show doesn't work is if the world suddenly stops being absurd. and I have no like, I don't have a feeling that the world is going to be any less absurd.
That camera stuff that's happening with you is nuts today.
Well, we spent like, but Josh spent time trying to fucking fix it. Like I've been borrowing my wife's laptop, which is about 3 feet away from me, and I can switch out all of this relatively quickly. But you go ahead and let it just instant psychedelia every now and then. And I think that's a little bit fitting. In fact, I am probably going to have to go replenish my supply of mushrooms later after the show. Jerofus, welcome to the chat. Remember, guys, this is an AMA, and we only have one more video left to show you. So if you have questions, please throw them at us.
And before we get into this last video, we have a GoFundMe up. I've put the link in the chat, but I'll drop it in there again. First of all, we would like you to join us in DC, if at all possible. We'll be there for that 3 weeks, at the beginning of Julian's rendition hearing to the end of it. But we also need you to help us circulate this. We have a new video that we'll be putting up here after the end of this stream, just thanking the donors that have helped out so far. But we also have a skeleton of events. We have different people and different groups we're pulling in to help fill up different days. So please plan on being there with us. If you are able at all, please donate. If you are not able, please help us circulate the link. But then additionally, we also have our call to actions. So this is something that we work kind of hard to put out as a group, but we want to make sure that people are actually engaging in them too. So what we're going to do, just to kind of give everyone an idea for next week, because this is something that we figured out on the show yesterday, actually, when we were talking with organizers from Mexico. AMLO, the president of Mexico, has actually come out in favor of Julian Assange, and he has a meeting in a couple weeks with President Trump. So what we're going to do is this coming week, we'll release it on Sunday or Monday. We're going to put out the list of all of the emails for the Mexican consulates and embassies and that on our actions for next week. And we need everyone to get involved to help us send emails to them to specifically ask for the president of Mexico to speak with Donald Trump about Julian Assange. So that's something that this could make a huge impact. The timing is really, really perfect, especially with Commander X receiving political asylum in Mexico. So yeah, I really look forward to putting out next week's action, and I really, really hope that everybody can get involved with it.
I wasn't flipping you off. I was flipping off my camera. I want to say for the record that X's lawyer is a very, very, very beautiful woman. It was hard to concentrate on.
And she had a very wonderful Legend of Zelda t-shirt on.
Absolutely.
And that makes it even more wonderful.
Yeah.
But having her on yesterday was awesome because she was really, really insightful. I would love to pull her back in for like a group panel interview about it.
The old couple that does the vigils in Oakland at on Fruitvale Avenue, they stopped during coronavirus. They're starting back up. They would like to be on next week, so I've got their contact information. And that guy Ryan is just like an Oakland activist legend, dude. He's been around. Beat my camera. I'm going to beat it. I'm going to stomp on it, and I'm going to be in pieces.
Did you try turning it off and back on again, Steve?
What I'm gonna do is I'm going to suck it up and buy like a $500 computer on a credit card and make minimum payments until I'm 47. I think that's what's gonna happen, which is longer off than people might think. It's like 5 whole years. All right, if I could, for whatever reason.
So before we get into Taylor's video, please put questions in the chat for us, because we don't have, after Taylor's video, that's pretty much the wrap up of the stream. I'm sure we'll chat for a little bit, but we'd really like to answer your questions if you guys have any. So please toss them in there, and then by the end of the video, hopefully we'll have enough to go on for a little bit.
Daniel wants you to talk a little bit more about a pirate radio station for Julian, and I need to replenish a beverage. So if you want to handle that before we get into T's
Yeah.
video.
So, Stella Morris put out maybe a week or two ago that Julian officially got a radio. It was something that they purchased from Commissary very early on when he was in Belmarsh, and now after a year, he finally has it for himself to listen to the radio with. So what I would like to do, and I'm not in London, so I can't set this up, but I think it would be really cool if someone set up a pirate radio station out there. Personally, I think 1337 AM would be a wonderfully funny channel, but I would like it, if at all possible, for anyone to do this, or if there's any major radio stations that would be willing to. By major, I mean like the Sputniks of the world and such. But helping Julian prepare for his court case via radio. And it seems weird and it seems silly to kind of say that, but that's his only connection to the outside world at large right now, is being able to listen to this radio. So if people had the chance to read the opening statements that have come out, if people get a chance to read all of the actual charges that are against him and all of the wording there, we don't have access to all of the evidence and all of this. But even I personally feel like just reading Julian through the radio, what he's actually facing and what these charges are and all of the bullshit that they just added on with the new conspiracy to commit computer intrusion expansion, getting that information to him, to me, seems paramount, because we know that he doesn't get the chance to prepare for his case. So if it's something as simple as him listening to the radio and hearing what the wording is of these documents, hopefully would make a difference. And I think that there's a real opportunity here for some independent media corporation or some person out there with some technical abilities to make a huge difference in the tide of history, simply by providing Julian with the transparency in his case that we're capable of doing. And it seems far-fetched, it seems hopeful, but it's an antiquated technology. You can literally go on Amazon and buy it. And if I had the means to get to London or to organize with people in London that had the ability to do this, I think it would be incredible. So if you're someone that's interested in helping out with a project like this, that has some technical know-how, that can help in some way develop the basic infrastructure like an antenna that we would need to be able to do this, please contact us. Because I don't know if it could even get anywhere, but I just know that I feel like that would be a huge benefit in this situation. And Josh fucking hates when I talk about this, because technically it would be illegal. I'm assuming you can't just bootleg airwaves over in the UK. But
Right?
who gives a fuck, honestly, at this point in human history? Because it's illegal to put a publisher in jail. He has the right to publish information. He has the right to know what he's being charged with, and all we're doing is facilitating him having his rights. So regardless, and this is a terrible thing to say on YouTube, but regardless of that, I think a pirate radio station would be fucking phenomenal and would go a really long way to even just edge the course of human history to the side a little bit.
Welcome to Radio Free Assange. Fuck your empire. Here we go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
1337 AM.
Which look, if you are technologically inclined, all it takes is an antenna within like 500 meters of Belmarsh to be able to broadcast that signal, even at a like, and that's something that can be moved very often. Like, as long as you've got I guess we were talking about doing this here in my town in Boulder Creek, like, fuck dude, 10-15 years ago we were talking about having a little pirate radio station. Now we actually have a radio station, and it broadcasts about 3 miles. It's just tiny little public, or publicly funded Radio Free Boulder Creek, and it really didn't cost that much. Like, to have a fully functional operating radio station, it's like $50,000 a year to be able to do that. And that's with all equipment purchased. And then after that, the cost drops significantly. But you can set up pirate radio for significantly less. Not that we're encouraging illegal behavior, Kevin. Not that we are, but we are.
I mean, is it illegal to encourage illegal behavior if you're not in that country?
I think
though?
it falls under conspiracy, like conspiracy to commit computer
Radio
intrusion.
Conspiracy to commit radio intrusion.
Yeah, conspiracy to commit airwave intrusion. I think is I don't know. Look, man, if the UK is going to shit on every principle of law that they have, and they're going to act as a satrap for the, State Department or the CIA or even just the global intelligence sharing network that is the Five Eyes. Fuck you.
And Steve's camera swaps.
If they're gonna crap on the rule of law like that, it seems like turnabout is fair play. It seems that way. I mean, that's why hacktivism is vital. That's why activism in general is vital. Bobby Foxglove in the chat. Do we know how does he receive communications? So the report that we've been getting, Bobby, is he's in there 23 and a half hours a day in total isolation for 30 minutes a day. He's allowed to walk around a concrete yard with 4 other prisoners. His legal team has been denied visitation except for over the phone because of COVID. Like, the prison is saying, no, you can't come in here because there's COVID-19 here and we don't want to risk exposure to you. But no, we're not going to let them out on compassionate release, even while monitored. It's the same sort of intellectual disconnect that allows them to say, well, we can't release him at all because we haven't charged
him with anything.
And gonna freak out.
Hey, wiggle that cable a little bit. I think it's the
You
connector.
wiggled it.
Yeah,
Now
it's-
both of them are on.
Yeah, it's the port.
Now it's not recognized.
Do we want to play? You're going to have to swap it back if you jiggled it and it completely disconnected. You'll have to go into your settings in Jitsi probably and
Yeah.
reassign the camera. While we are having these wonderful technical issues, do we want to play Taylor's birthday video?
Yeah.
A call-over hearing was held on Monday, June 29th at Westminster Magistrates Court before Judge Vanessa Baraitser. Mark Summers, QC, spoke on behalf of the defense, while Joel Smith spoke on behalf of the prosecution. The new superseding indictment, Assange's health, and the difficulties of trying the case were all addressed during the hearing. The latest indictment, which we've covered in a previous report, alleges that Assange recruited hackers and conspired with the hacktivist collective Anonymous, specifically the hacking group LulzSec. This is all based off of the testimony of 2 unreliable government informants. During the June 29th hearing, Assange's defense told the judge that it learned of the new indictment against Assange through the media. The defense stated it was surprised by the timing of this indictment and that it had not been formally issued the document. Judge Baraitser claims that she too did not receive the document, but was emailed about the existence of the new indictment. WikiLeaks editor-in-chief Kristen Hrafnsson issued a statement which was published through the Don't Extradite Assange campaign.
This underlines what we've seen before, the total disregard for the due legal process in the case. It also shows the discontent or disregard the US has for the British justice system.
Mark Summers, QC, for the defense, stated that the new allegations impact future hearings. The defense is due to submit final evidence in the case by July 10th. The new indictment makes it more difficult for both sides to meet the deadlines and requirements set by the court. Joel Smith, for the prosecution, said its psychologist has been unable to assess Assange due to the COVID-19 restrictions in prison. And because of the coronavirus, Assange has been unable to attend his hearings via video link and was not in attendance at this latest hearing. A series of solidarity actions will be held throughout the months of July and August. For more details, visit wiseupaction.info. On Friday, July 3rd, to celebrate Assange's 49th birthday, Candles for Assange events are being held around the world, including in Cottbus, Cannes, Frankfurt, and Hamburg. For details, visit candlesforassange.com.
You're back.
I just want to give a big thank you for Taylor for making that.
And I
she's
would
been
like to apologize to the inhabitants of Cologne, Germany, because every time their city is announced, that someone crackers up and tramples all over the name. It's not as bad as Munich.
So Alex pulled off a great one last night with her British New England or British New Zealand accent, trying to read off the Spanish error message. I don't know if you remember that one. That was pretty good.
Yeah, my Spanish for living in California is weak. I can do construction Spanish, which is mostly a series of gestures, and kitchen Spanish, which is mostly a series of swear words. But
So I do want to give a big thank you though to Taylor, because she's been doing an absolutely amazing job over at Activism Munich, circulating this information about Julian. Every time there's an update, she puts out a really well-produced, high-quality video about it. So I just want to give her a big thank you, because that goes a long way. And she's still going on radio stations and TV interviews all the time, promoting Julian and talking about him too. So she's out there doing a really Herculean effort, working pretty much like 10 to 14 hours a day, almost every day, making sure that she can still produce high quality videos and that everything gets put out. So big shout out to her, @_Taylor Hudak on Twitter. But yeah, do we have any more questions in the chat? Because I don't see any between A for A and Unity for J. Do we have anything over in Steve's chat right now?
let me look.
If you guys have any questions, feel free to toss them up and put them in there, because we're probably going to be wrapping up here in a little bit. So if there's anything else you want to know, just give us a...
So Bobby Foxglove says, we absolutely live in cartoon land. It is still beyond absurd that is being held without charges. Is that not illegal? Kangaroo Court Theater of the Absurd, cartoon land. So look, it is legal. He's being held what they call on remand. And a remand prisoner is someone who is waiting to go to court. It's very, very similar to people in the U.S. who spend time in jail because their bond is too high and they can't afford their bond. So they're being held in jail on remand because they can't afford to bond out. And that actually, the last time that I talked to Jeff Black, who's been on the vigil, who we need to get back, probably give him a well check too, I would imagine. The last time I talked to Jeff, it was slightly over 70% of every single U.S. citizen that's in jail, not prison, but jail, is there on remand without charges, waiting. We're not being charged with anything, but just waiting to go to court, which is a staggeringly high number. And I've been one of those people. It sucks. I can tell you, man, when I was a lad, I was in Athens, Georgia, for a series of widespread panic shows that took place over my birthday week. And on the last day, it was pouring down rain. And so there were 5 of us that were fucking tour heads. And we were standing underneath an awning out of the rain, and we got swarmed on by bicycle cops who fucking, threw everybody against the wall and pocket checked everyone. And the cop that searched me pulled out 6 hits of ecstasy from my pocket that were not there before the cops showed up. So I spent 3 months in the Clark County jail waiting to go to court. My bond was set at like $100,000 because they were trying to pursue, like, I think trafficking charges originally for 6 hits of ecstasy, by the way. Like, I don't know why they think that's kingpin shit. I don't, but that's how they were treated. And they did this to just a fuck ton of people that were street kids or tour kids, relatively homeless yet somewhat organized. And they were trying to get rid of us. So so they had us all in there for 3 months. Only like 2 people could bond out. They had the 10 grand to be able to do that. They let us out the day before Fish was in Atlanta for 2 days. So all of these tour kids got let out of jail on the same day and went to basically walked to a parking lot where a Fish show was taking place. And that's how most of us got out of Atlanta or got out of Athens. That came with a 15-year, you are not allowed back in the state of Georgia, like, tail. Like, they banned me from Georgia for 15 years, which was not a problem for me to avoid the state of Georgia. There's a Joe Cuba song that showed up on the soundtrack in like the late 90s called I'll Never Go Back to Georgia, and that shit was playing on a loop in my head for about 5 years.
So we have a question here in the chat, Steve. You've probably gone over this 1,000 times, but do you think the U.S. will bring Julian to the U.S.?
Yeah, let me answer a question from Bobby real quick. Remand for what? Remand, he's on remand waiting to be black bagged in broad daylight and taken to the U.S. and thrown in a hole for 175 years. The remand is for the extradition hearing. So that's what that is. Do I think he's going to come to the U.S.? I think that without immense public pressure and everyone doing the work of exposing what a show trial this is and how politically motivated this is, and pointing to the fact that the UK has 2 separate treaties that do not allow extradition for politically motivated offenses and do not allow extradition if the death penalty is involved. 175-year sentence is a death penalty. It is. And we know that this is politically motivated. We know that there are multiple world governments, individual governments that are persecuting Julian Assange for purely political reasons.
And just to piggyback off that with the terminology that we used, a couple weeks back we had a French journalist and activist on who we were talking to about words and terminology, because we use the word traffic instead of arrested, and he used the word rendition instead of extradition, or extraordinary rendition. And most people know, but just to sum it up pretty well, what a rendition is literally the theft of a person from one country to another, specifically because the second country's laws allow for a larger amount of torture to be committed. And that's what this is. So I think that the U.S. wants him here. I think that they are foaming at the mouth to be able to do whatever the hell these evil fucking people want to do to someone that exposed their crimes, who literally just pushed some buttons on a keyboard and was able to be adept enough at it to literally embarrass the elites of the entire world. So I think that they will go to whatever fucking length they want to get him here, because ultimately the power of a state is its ability to break its own laws.
I'm seeing this regarding secret trials in Australia. David McBride, Bernard Cullery, Richard Boyle. Richard has 42 of 64 charges dropped. This illustrates frivolous litigation to tie up lawyers. Well, yeah, I mean, look, I've had this conversation with lawyer friends of mine where being a lawyer is like 10% knowing the law, 50% knowing how to use the law to delay and stall and obfuscate, and then like 40% being able to bullshit. And if you're good at bullshit and you've got enough cocaine or Adderall or whatever, you can pass the bar exam. Like, anybody can be a lawyer with enough stimulants and basic rote memory. You know, it's just where, Bobby just looked up how long you can be held in remand in the UK. Julian's already been held way longer than it says. They're clearly breaking their own laws. That's the point that we've been making for the better part of a year now. That the ongoing persecution and torture of Julian Assange represents the complete erosion of the rule of law, not just in the UK, but internationally, and certainly by the United States State Department and intelligence agency. Yes, glory Julian's in Belmarsh for no reason at this point. Absolutely. The bail jumping thing was a fraudulent charge to begin with. He had already been granted asylum by Ecuador a week prior to the bail jumping charge being thrown at him. It's ridiculous. Watchman says he gave up stimulants a decade ago. I still drink coffee. That's my stimulant. And we're, live on the air, so look, man, I think taking one look at me or hearing me speak for any amount of time, people can come to the conclusion that, like, I've probably done a drug or two in my life.
When I look at you, Steve, with that nice jacket on, I just picture like upstanding gentlemen,
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to fool you. No, it's look, man, I do cocaine like every few years just to remind myself why it's terrible, and maybe learn a new song on mandolin. But it's been a really long time. It has. There's shitty cocaine here in Santa Cruz County, as a general rule. I think.
Do we
Gotta rip off them lawyers.
What?
Huh?
Said gotta rip off them lawyers.
Right. Let's see. Sada Fatima, how does public support help in the legal case that is ongoing? It puts pressure on the court system. It puts pressure on the media. It puts pressure on people in positions of real or perceived power.
So here's a literal example of this, right? So Amnesty International has, for a while, taken a backseat to Julian Assange, right? They kind of just said, well, we stuck up for him in the past. We're not putting him as a prisoner of conscience. Back burner kind of thing, right? In Mexico, they were able to make enough noise and to create enough pressure and to contact the right people that Amnesty International Mexico put out a call to action for people to support Julian Assange and to take action for Julian. And in doing that, that went out to the entire world. And it's not an end all be all. It's not the final thing that will get Julian free, but it's just one more push. It's one more chipping away of the block and reaching another group of people that have yet to hear this message again properly for a decade now. So little things like that can make a difference. And even if pushback doesn't really feel like it makes a difference in the short term when you're fighting to get these things, that public support really does make a difference, because the only reason they can get away with this case is because people aren't watching. Because if you
people are programmed to hate Julian Assange.
yeah,
and
if you strip away the Julian Assange part of it and talk about just what's happening through the legal process to other people that have an interest in altering the state power, other activists, other organizers, other people in the independent media, and you break down not what even Julian did or the propaganda against him, but just the mechanisms they're using to abuse him, that in and of itself is generally enough to get support of people.
Yeah, well, it's one of those things where and you bring this up a lot, Andre, where when you ask people a basic question like, does a journalist or publisher deserve 175 years in prison for publishing accurate information? Pretty much everyone is going to say no. So if you can engage someone in a conversation that isn't centered around the character assassination of Julian Assange, if you can get it down to bare bones of what this is really about, then you can have an impact. Credico last night brought up Nelson Mandela and how there was eventual like massive global support for Nelson Mandela. That took almost 27 years in order to get that going. It took people genuinely understanding what apartheid was and the role that the US and the UK played in it. Eventually becoming a supporter of Nelson Mandela was so widespread and popular that you've got someone like Joe Biden lying, saying that he was there protesting and shit like that. Like that's how that's kind of what we got. We've got 65 days to drive that message home. And if you are currently part of an activist group, if you are currently someone who's been involved in demonstrations, we need you to be the liaison for the fucking gravity of this situation, which is no matter what your cause is going to fail if you don't have the ability to get the information out. If you know, the veneer of a free press that we still have is ripped away by the incarceration for 175 years of Julian Assange, your activism doesn't work. Like even getting out into the streets. Do you remember just a couple of years ago when there were like 23 separate teacher strikes going on at the same time that had positive end results for the teachers? There was no media coverage about that shit. None. They were
even the independent media only covered it a handful of times, and that's because it was so hard to find information on.
Yeah, and one of the people that did a fantastic job was Ron Placone. So I want to take a minute to give a shout out to Ron, because he really, like, his show is viewer curated, you know, so he's doing whatever stories the people that watch his show are interested in, which makes it a little bit less, you know, horse racy, which I really appreciate. What bugs the shit out of me is when 100% horse race channels get, you know, we'll do like, oh, Ghislaine Maxwell got arrested, so we're going to talk about that because it's clickbaity as fuck, and we're going to go ahead and get AdSense money out of that. And that's why they're doing it. They're not doing it because they have a genuine interest in ending a global fucking child sex trafficking network per se. I'm sure they want it. I'm sure everybody that's watching right now would like to put an end to that. But in terms of reporting on it, it's really fucking thin on the ground. You know, so when you see a content creator that only does horse race shit, that suddenly comes out with an item of news that is just so far and removed from their normal routine, you got to be able to put two and two together and go, oh, this is for clickbait. And I know that there are channels that have been discussing this for years that have a much better understanding of the overall situation, like Jason Burmis.
Mm-hmm. Jason Burmis actually drove out, as of yesterday, was driving to the house where they found Ghislaine Maxwell. Like, that's on the ground journalism. Like, that's fucking reporting. But so we have a question in the chat here. I heard several people tell me that it's selfish to make freeing Assange your #1 issue over healthcare, etc. What do you say to that army of Bernie apologists? With that hits me with that. So
the exact same thing that I just said. Like, your advocacy for whatever cause doesn't stand a chance without your ability to freely share information. And your ability to freely share information is being threatened on a global scale right now by the persecution of Julian Assange.
And
so I would actually answer that you can do both, right? That the fight to free Julian Assange is the fight for a democratic society to be able to develop these institutions further. So I think if anyone that's like, oh, healthcare matters, but fuck Julian Assange if we can get that, explain to them, like, it's about how you view the role of government and what the fuck's happening right now. Like, would you want the same war criminals actively prosecuting Julian to be the person to make decisions about your healthcare while Bill Gates owns every single institution that makes healthcare decisions? No. So it's,
yeah.
But you don't hear about those things because our media is owned by the same oligarchs that own the institutions. So it's this collective issue, like Steve is saying.
Yeah, I'm hard pressed to find a Bernie supporter that doesn't, on some level, believe that there's a shared consciousness or a global community kind of thing. They talk a lot about worker rights and worker solidarity. You aren't going to get accurate information about what is happening to workers if there's no fucking free press.
And if you want to, and if you're actually a well-educated person on these issues, you would understand the history of the prosecution and the use of the Espionage Act as a way to target predominantly left-wing anti-war union organizing voices. The first person to be charged with it was Eugene Debs. He was an anti-war organizer here in Ohio that read a 4-minute speech that landed him in prison because he said, don't join the U.S. military. And the first caveat to our free speech under the Espionage Act happened because of Eugene Debs giving a simple speech about entrance into World War I. So people who actually can understand the scope of history and how these things are used can see the direct connection between workers' rights and ending the global war apartheid state. And Julian Assange was someone, while he was not a leftist per se, he was still someone that supported ending the global war state.
Yeah, Julian Assange has only ever spoken favorably about two political parties, and one was the Pirate Party in Iceland, and the other was the Internet Party in New Zealand. And as far as those go, you can classify them more as universally libertarian as opposed to, you know, what U.S. libertarians are, which is far too often Republicans who smoke weed.
Property-based libertarianism.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's see, Sada Fatima. And if I'm fucking your name up, you can let me know in the chat. Why is Julian Assange case not an open and shut case, since the rule is not to extradite anyone from the UK, so he cannot be taken? It's simple. So why is it a long run case, or it's extended this much? Because it's a giant stitch up by global superpowers. There have been a number of people who have made the point that Julian Assange is one person who is the face of one media outlet that is going up against the largest superpower in the world, in the United States, and then B, the Five Eyes countries, and then C, every other government or corporation that he has embarrassed over the years by simply publishing what they do and how they operate. I made this point, I think, on Gordon's podcast. I did like a 2-hour podcast with Gordon earlier in the week. That happened at like 6 a.m. my time. So I don't remember a whole lot from it. But the same people who will sit there and tell you, if you don't have anything to hide, you don't have anything to be afraid of in terms of the surveillance state. Once that axiom is flipped on them and you expose what they have hidden, they don't like that at all. They freak out. They lash out like petulant children. And but petulant children with billions of dollars, private armies, and lots and lots of influence within the oligarchy. So I think people need to draw that conclusion a little bit more. I think people need to kind of push that a bit. You know, the WikiLeaks has always been about privacy for the individual and transparency for the powerful. I just said it in the anonymous video. Julian Assange has said information goes upwards to the powerful. Rarely does it go to the serfs or peasants, which are us. Trying to see what we got here.
It's a question about deepfakes.
I'm trying to find it.
It's near the bottom.
Gerald Kelly, what do I think about deepfakes, using them in the future to start wars up? I absolutely. I think that deepfakes are going to be involved in a series of false flags over the next decade.
Do you know what's interesting? So WikiLeaks still has their like insurance files, right? The files that you can download that aren't previously released, that there's a key supposedly that gets released and then they can be opened, right? Those existed before commonly accessible modern deepfake technology. Those have been on the internet since probably about 2010, maybe a little after or a little before. So in the world that we're living in with all of these deep fakes and all of this bullshit, right? Those files, whatever the fuck's in them, aren't deep fakes. Those are legitimate, accurate, verifiable files that exist there. So I think what we could potentially see is them using deep fakes, the proverbial they who run the world in the shadows, would use deep fakes to get ahead of stories as well, not just for creating false flags, but to put out a deep fake of X, Y, or Z person committing A, B, or C heinous act. So that way, when the real videos get released, people assimilate them. If the real videos were to get released, or if they knew about them getting released in advance, people would assimilate them with the deep fakes. So even if it was a real video that someone leaks or WikiLeaks drops or what have you, they can say, hey, this is a deep fake, put out a deep fake video right around the same time. Just like the DC leaks and the Guccifer 2 leaks came out in timing to try to disrupt the DNC leaks. So I think that that'll be a way that they're used as well, as a very strong disinformation tool to be able to deflect and convolute stories as they come out in the future. You're muted, Steve. You're still muted, Steve.
Somebody was asking for the GoFundMe link in the chat, and I was trying to get to it, but I had to switch computers halfway through.
I'll throw it in there.
It's gonna take a second.
I got it.
I'm trying to pull it up here too. But I think that's everything. Do we have any more questions, or are we good?
I'm not seeing anything in my chat.
Yeah, so I want to thank everybody for watching. I want to thank Alex and Josh for being fucking vigilant as shit, being able to get at least 26 hours of streams done on less than 3 hours of sleep. And I want to thank everybody for viewing us and making this what it is, because this has been a year of making these videos now and getting the vigils and everything set up, and the chaos and the stress and the protests, and it's all worth it. So I just really appreciate everybody getting involved at the back and everyone who just views and shares. And I just really hope that we can put out a lot better calls to action over the next couple of weeks leading up to this, to really dig in and get people involved and understand that differences can be made.
Real quick, Rob Juno, and by the way, thank you for the super chat, Rob. We love you. Why are the criminals still running the show? Because people think that if you put shiny new parts on a machine designed to kill you, that putting new parts on that machine will help. I've talked about this before, but there's an essay called 3 Cheers for Socialism. And while I don't agree with everything in the essay, there are some fantastic points in it. And point A is the United States is the most heavily propagandized nation on the planet. This is inarguable. The other very salient point is the Americans, as a rule, don't know our own history, and I think that this is something that you can take and put into all of the Five Eyes countries. There are all over the place people who flat the fuck out don't know the history of their own country, and when they talk about it, you get looked at like you've got fucking 5 heads growing out of you. I've made the joke before that you could literally go to your coffee shop right now, open up a laptop, pull up the CIA's own website, and read off the declassified information on the CIA's own website, and people would go, "You're a fucking nutcase, tinfoil hat, conspiracy motherfucker," and you could flip the laptop around and be like, "But look, it's their shit. I'm not saying this, they are," and they will have such a pre-programmed reaction to that they are not going to believe what they're reading, because it counteracts so hard with what they've been propagandized over. So yeah, I hope that I hope that clears up that question, and then yeah, we can go ahead and sign off.
Yeah. My name's Andrew Smith. You can find me on Twitter at Andrew Zigman. You can find us at action_4 Assange. You can also find us at actionforassange.com, and you can email us at info@action4assange.com.
And I'm Steve Poikinen. I host a show called Slow News Day. You can find it on YouTube by typing in Slow News Day Podcast. I'm also on Rockfin and DLive. And we'll hopefully be on a couple of more platforms over the next month or so. Tomorrow, Ryan Christian from The Last American Vagabond will be my guest. That will be a lot of fun. Make sure that you're there for that. And yeah, we love you guys. Thank you all who have been here in the chat with us from like day fucking one. Much love to you guys and to people who are just starting to come on board. I'm not the type of person that's going to shame somebody for coming into this movement late in the game. I know that happens a lot in activist circles where people are like, oh, well, where the fuck were you 5 years ago? Blah, 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 blah. No, that's not how we're going to do it here. So thank you all very, very much. Thanks to Sleepy Josh on the ones and twos and my co-host, Andrew Smith. And yeah, we will see you Tuesday for the vigil, where Dame Kathy Vogan will be on, and I am trying to coordinate with Marjorie Cohn to have her on as well. So I hope that works out. If not, Dame Kathy is fascinating in and of herself, and that will be just a wonderful interview. So we will see you. Hopefully, I'll see all of you guys tomorrow on Slow News Day. And if not tomorrow, then Tuesday. Good luck to us all.